Hello and welcome to the Do You Remember podcast, the podcast that takes us back to happier times. My name's Adam Anwar, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by stand-up comedian Silham Shazad.
Hello, Adam. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, man. How are you?
I'm well, considering everything that's going on. Just trying to stay positive in this midst of an apocalypse.
Nice one, man. I think that's all we can do, isn't it? And today, hopefully, we're going to be keeping positive because we're going to be looking back at something that me and you, we both got a common interest and love for, and that's the TV show Goodness Gracious Me. So, for the people who might not know, can you give us a brief synopsis and tell us what was Goodness Gracious Me?
Sure, Adam. Well, Goodness Gracious Me was basically a sketch show. I'd say sort of the first of its kind because it was an Asian sketch show, and at the time it was very forward thinking and very ahead of its time.
Nice one, exactly. And this TV show, it came out in like 1998, so it's been out for a long time, and it's had that kind of lasting impact on people. So let's take it all the way back, shall we? When was the first time you remember hearing about Goodness Gracious Me?
Well, I remember this so vividly. So the first time I ever watched it was me and my brother were part of this sort of like school scheme where if your parents worked and it was a scheme for kids. And we went to the National Media Museum here in Bradford. It's where I'm from. And there were the helpers. And we got to go into the sort of like little cinema. And what was playing was Goodness Gracious Me. And everybody was like so surprised around me that I'd never watched this. And so this was in 2000, the summer of 2004. So I was about 8 years old when I first saw an episode. And I really resonated with it.
Wow, that's really interesting, that, because I've actually been to that museum. I almost got left behind there on a college trip once, but that's a different story. But yeah, that's interesting that there, of all places, you just happened to stumble upon it. So what was like your first opinions then when you did see it? Because you mentioned it resonated with you. So what was your first opinions when you sat there in 2004 in this museum and goodness
Well,
gracious me is there on?
oh yeah, it was amazing because I was 8 years old at the time. And obviously, here coming from my background, our background, you never see people in sort of mainstream TV that have our complexion. And with Goodness Gracious Me, it was the first time I'd seen an more or less all Asian cast on sort of on a Western network, and they even had a token white guy. You know, it was just so unheard of. And even there, I didn't understand the significance, but I could feel something. And now, as I've got older, you sort of you relate to it more because being in the arts, you can relate to it.
That's a really interesting point you touched on. It's something that as a child I didn't really think about too much, but representation is so key in the media, and that is why I gravitated towards this show as well. Is seeing a it wasn't just a typical Asian TV show where it was made in India, made in Pakistan, and brought over
Exactly.
here. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was made here. It was made by British Asians, and like it was mind blowing to me that a British TV channel would like greenlight a show like this and go, here you go. I've pretty much an all Asian cast, and have
Yeah.
your two token white people, because that used to be the thing. Used to be the flip side. There used to be a token ethnic character on a lot of these TV shows, but they completely flipped it, and I was mind blown at the time. But yeah, it's interesting. Oh, like I say, you saw it by chance. So, what was your like kind of process then after that to go seek out more episodes?
Well, what happened was I started. I remember coming back and I talked to my grandparents about it because they had comedies in their times and like BBC with stuff like
Hmm.
mind your language, and they'd have like brown face on there. Do you know what I mean? People that weren't
Yeah.
brown just doing accents. And this is a sort of show like we said. So I inquired. I talked to my grandma and granddad. Or I was like, oh, I saw the show, and from there, I just remember my mum showing me some episodes on like YouTube, and I was just sitting down, and then I actually went back a few weeks after with me, my brother, grandma, and granddad, and we went back and we went to the museum because it was literally 10 minutes away from our house, and we
Yeah.
just saw more episodes. It was amazing.
So what was like grandma and granddad's opinion of it then? Because like typically older generation Asians, they're not really kind of open to a lot of this stuff. They kind of dismiss it as like just folly, that kind of thing. So what was their opinion of it?
Well, with their opinion was really interesting because what was funny about a lot of the sketches, and goodness gracious me, was they were sort of poking fun at some of the culture, some of the obvious stereotypes, and my grandma and granddad fit these stereotypes that they were doing on the sketch show, and
Yeah.
they'd laugh it off as if like, oh, that's so funny, they're just being idiots, and I just thought, but that's what you do, literally.
Yeah.
But they were really good about it. My grandparents are always, I think they're a bit different in that sense in terms of like the older Asian generation. They're very open to the comedies. They're very up for a laugh, and especially my granddad. Honestly, one of the funniest guys I've ever met.
Oh, that's cool, man, because I had the kind of opposite experience. Like, all the older Asian people I knew didn't want to have anything to do with goodness gracious me. They really dismissed it as something that
Really?
they didn't really care for. I think it might be something to do with the fact that in the first episode there's that scene that repeats over and over again where it's like, Dad, you know we're Hindu, right? Oh, and I know that thing you do with
Oh,
your hands is really, really bad. And then there's the thing, obviously, there's a Muslim as well. It's like, oh, that thing you do with your hands is really, really bad. And I feel like some of them kind of felt like it was just taking the piss out of Islam a little bit. But I never really saw it like that because they didn't really take the piss out of any religion. They just touched on them a little bit to create humour elsewhere. And the butt of the joke was never really the religion, was it?
no, no, exactly. No, I totally agree with that because when you break it down, like me, I'm such a sometimes just deep thinker, just go over with it. But the religion ones were so interesting because he'd ask his dad, he'd be like, "Oh, so Dad, we're Sikh. What does it mean to be Sikh?" And they did it. Obviously, they did the Hindu version of that. They did the Muslim version of that. Like you said, it was so interesting to see because it's so relevant. Like so many of us look at our culture and we're just not sure sometimes like what it truly is. Like what truly is. What does it mean to be a Muslim or what does it mean to be a Hindu? You just get labeled something and we never really think about it.
Yeah, sure. And I think a lot of people go through life, they don't ever really question it. It's just kind of, there you go, you were born with this label on you, and they just carry on with life and
Exactly.
they don't really question it. And I think it is very important to question that and to question those parts of identity to say, is this something that I actually relate to? And those are definitely, definitely interesting questions to ask for. But so what was it that like really made you a fan then? What was it about this TV show, besides what you've already mentioned, obviously, that like really pulled you in, and what was the appeal?
Well, I think the big appeal for me was just how true it was, just how real it was. Like I could really relate to some of the sketches, and like even today, for example, like there was once a sketch about a mum telling, I think, a daughter off for always wearing black. Black clothes, why you're not wearing bright colours. And today
Hmm.
I was out in the sun and I was wearing a black t-shirt, and my mum literally came to me and said, Silham, why have you got a black t-shirt on? Go wear something bright. And I just thought, this is so real, even in 2020.
Yeah.
And that's what I loved. And the fact that it wasn't just Asian stereotypes in the sketches. The sketches also had stereotypes of what we think of other people or what people thought. So, for example, what stereotypes Asian people have about white people. And that was a sort of like role reversal as well. So it's interesting how they reversed some roles as well.
Oh, that is my probably my favorite thing about the entire show is the way they do role reversals. But that was one of the things in general that goodness gracious me did really really well is they touched on stereotypes, but they challenged them. And
Yeah.
they found ways to make everything so funny, and they made these great set of characters, and then they would put them in ridiculous situations to see how they would react. And it ended up just becoming absolute genius pieces of art. But yeah, the role reversals, like I remember one of my favorite ones is like going out for an English
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as like the take on going out for an Indian, or there's the one where I think is he called Jonathan, and
Yes,
like
yeah, the name, yep, yep.
yeah, he's called Jonathan, and he's in this meeting at work with all other Indian people, and they're like, oh, how
Yeah.
are we supposed to pronounce your long-winded name? And that's so true, isn't it? Like, do you know what like it really grinds my gears, this in general. Like when someone's called Mohammed, yeah, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
people just call him Mo, like. I don't see that as sacrilegious. I mean, I know some people might do, but like I don't see it as that. I just see it as lazy. I just see it as like come on, everyone knows how to pronounce Mohammed. Like, why do you need to shorten it down to more? It's not like, I don't know, if you've got someone called, I don't know, Patrick, you're gonna shorten it down to Pa, are you? You're gonna just say the full name.
Exactly, and that's funny you say that as well because my full name, Adam, especially in comedy as well, is just it's just Silham Shazad. That's 4 syllables, and it literally is. You pronounce it how you see it,
Yeah.
and so many times I've had at comedy shows, and even people that have known me for months and starting comedy, they'll either say something like Shilham Shazad, or they'll say Salim Shazad, and I'm like, so many times I've had the
Yeah.
MCs before I come on, they're like, how do you pronounce your name, mate? Like, if they've not met me before and I say, oh, it's Silham Shazad, and they're like, oh, got it, perfect. They get up on stage and they're like, the next act is, he's from Bradford. just
Yeah.
because you just forget the name.
It happens, doesn't it? It is quite annoying, and like how a lot of Asian acts they change their names, don't they? And like they allow their names to be like mispronounced just so that they fit in and just so they're like not kicking up a fuss, don't they? And I remember Hassan Minaj saying like, "Listen, if people can say Timothy Chalamet, they can say Hassan Minaj." Like, so
Definitely, yeah.
why? Because my face is brown, can they not say my name? But this guy with a way more difficult pronounced name, just because he's white, why can they say that? And this all the way back in the night, because they must have written this sketch like in the mid 90s. If this was released in like '98, they must,
Yeah, I think they did, yeah.
yeah. To have that like the quality to not just write it, but to genuinely make it funny, and it's to still be relevant to this day. It really shows the power and the strength of the writing, doesn't it?
And definitely, and I think back then as well, like, we're sort of looking, so I'm not saying racism doesn't exist, but back then, the sort of 90s, 80s, 90s, there was a lot more racism, and the way they did this sort of, I think, united people as opposed to sort of divided them, because that's what comedy does, really. You know, you poke fun at something, and it can, unite different groups of people together.
Definitely, and I think it would be a really interesting experiment, not necessarily an experiment, but a really interesting point of view to talk to someone who was just fully white English, born and bred through
Yeah.
generations, who watched this show and ask them what was your point of view and what was it that really drew you to it. And that'd be a really interesting thing to actually go and ask people, I think.
Oh, definitely. Well, I actually texted a few of my friends earlier, and I was like, so have any of you seen Goodness Gracious Me? Because I wanted to see if anybody sort of my
Yeah.
age, early mid 20s, has seen it that's not Asian, and none of them had seen it, and it just thought maybe it's more of their parents that might have remembered this, or they might have watched this and thought, yeah, this is funny.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing that Asians of all ages kind of go back and look at, but I kind of feel like it doesn't have that same like cachet with people who aren't Asian. Like you won't just get like most people going out of the way to find it. I've known a few people who've seen it who are younger and are just born and bred English and do enjoy it. But yeah, you're right. It is more on the rare side that people actually do that. So who was your favourite characters then? Like if we can start talking about a few characters in this because there's so many good ones.
Honestly, there's so many. I think my favourite ones have to be the Coopers and Robinson.
Yeah,
Oh, honestly, like, because they're so involved in that show. They have a lot of sketches about them, and it's just so funny because the more English they try to act, the more Punjabi they are. You
yeah,
know what I mean? It's that thing, and it's like every time he'd see Mr. Robinson, Mr. Cooper, he just goes Sajida. It's a very
yeah,
Indian
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Here, it's not a thing where you don't see your mate and you're like, oh baller. It's just not. It's just not a
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And it was just so interesting as well. Like, I think from like a social perspective as well, a cultural perspective where obviously, Pakistan and India, these are developing countries. And if you move here to a country that's really developed, you are going to be behind in some ways, and there are going to be some stereotypes about you. And it was funny how when they came to England, they're trying to play it off as if, oh, these dirty Asians, having that sort of mindset, like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
we're gonna fit in here no matter what. But just it's so funny when they go to the golf club, when they get a brick thrown through their window, that says "Go home, Packies," and they're not even Packies. That if you're gonna be racist, at least be
Yeah.
creative, and that was a funny thing as well because it highlights how there are different Asians. Not everyone is just you're a bloody Paki. It's not how it goes.
Definitely, and this show really managed to cover a lot of not just stereotypes, but a lot of the way that people are. It's easy to look at it and say that this is a stereotype, that's a stereotype, but I think they really did
Yeah,
look at the whole range of Asians and go, okay, there's some that are like this, there's some that are like that, there's some that are like this, and they're like, okay, let's take the mick out of all of them because like there's something funny in all of it. And for anyone who doesn't know about the Coopers, it's a Kapoor family and like the
yeah,
Robinsons. I can't remember what their surname was, but basically the story was that they were two Indian couples. They've come to the UK and now they pretend that they're English and they change
yeah,
the name like to Vanessa and I mean I don't even know if the name St. is English, but yeah, Dennis instead of Dinesh
yes, yeah.
Kapoor
That's
turned into
good.
Dennis
Yeah,
Cooper, and yeah, that was like such a funny bit where like they do get a brick through the window and like they go and it says Packies go home. They're like quite right, and they put it with the pile of the rest of the bricks that have like notes
exactly.
taped around them.
One of the best ones in that is when they're going to the swingers club. So they've been asked to
Yes,
the swingers, and they're like, "Oh, is this a swingers club?" And they're they're like, "Oh, yes, you know, the our Asian guests are very exotic. Our exotic guests are going to spice things up in the bedroom." And they're going, the Capuchin Robinson going, "Asians? We don't want Asians here."
yeah,
And they literally do see themselves as fully English. And the phrases they use as well when Mr. Cooper's like, all fruity, it's just, it's funny.
yeah. It's like someone trying to be something too much, isn't it? And all they are such great characters. But I mean, the thing is as well. We kind of know people like that, not specifically to the level that this is, because obviously the volume's
Yeah.
turned way up. But we know those kind of people who they kind of reject their Asianness and they only want to really talk about British things and they don't want to be associated with Asian things.
No, no, you're totally right. You know what though? I think probably, if I'm being honest, probably like early school years, year 7, year 8, year 9. It's hard though because I went to grammar school and a lot of the people were English, yeah, so there were very few of us, maybe like three in the whole year, three Asian people. And it's hard because it's an age where you want to fit in, you want to get on with everyone, and the easiest way to get picked on is if you're different. When you're away from the norm,
Sure.
and obviously having a skin colour that's different is you're away from the norm. But then as I was getting into year 9, year 10, and I was growing up, I thought, this is me. This is my culture. I'm going to speak to my grandparents in front of my mates, and I'll do it if I want to. I'll do it. At first I used to be like, oh, I don't want to do it, and oh, look at my granddad's accent, look at my grandma's accent. But they sacrificed a lot, and I'm proud of where they came from. So it is hard at first, I think.
Definitely, and I think a lot of kids, especially, do go through that. If you're in an environment, I mean, it doesn't matter what background you're from. If you're in an environment where everyone else is from a different environment, you could come from just a poor estate. You can be white English and come from a poor estate and go to a
Exactly. Yeah,
school
yeah, yeah.
where everyone's middle class and you don't fit in. I had a mate who he went to the same school as me, but he ended up going off to a very good uni, and like he just didn't fit in whatsoever. And that happens, and I'm sure that even at that older age was like very difficult. But yeah, especially when you're a kid and you do come from a different background, it's the very obvious thing for other kids to pick on, and kids will just say stupid stuff, won't they?
Exactly, and this is where the humour comes from because you learn to take it and you learn to give it back better. And I think that really develops you as a person as well.
Definitely, and I think as a stand-up comedian as well, one of the reasons I like to make Asian jokes because I mean I like to be like, listen, you might have some insults, but they're all right. But I can come up with better insults about myself than you, and like that's what I like to do. Blend in
Definitely,
the Polish and Asian stuff. Like, okay, your stuff was lazy and shit, but let me see what I can come up with. Let me be a bit more creative with it.
exactly. Self-deprecation as well.
Yeah, and not just that, just kind of using your voice to be like, okay, this is kind of my background, this is my story. Let's tell that a little bit. Let's put it out there because, like, it would have been very easy for this goodness gracious me shows them to just to completely ignore Asianness, but the fact that they touched on everything, that brought out a lot of the great stuff in it. And like we were mentioning before, the way they would flip stereotypes on the head was just like brilliant.
Oh,
Do you remember the one where like there was those Indian backpackers and they were coming to the UK? Did you remember that one?
I know which one you're talking about. The one where they're on the train.
Yeah, yeah, they're on the train and they're like, they go to like a burger van and they go, oh no, don't trust the meat here from the street sellers, and then like they throw it in the bin, like just flipping it all on the head because obviously that's what people say about India. I'm going to find myself. Don't trust the meat, and then they all
Yeah,
get sick. They all get the flu, and they're like, oh, you can't come to England and not expect to get the cold. You know, like the whole Delhi belly thing all flipped on its
yeah,
head.
yeah. And what's so funny about that as well when they were on the trains as well. It kind of pokes fun at the train system here because we all know trains are rubbish in England.
Yeah,
Uh, and they're all like, oop, there's been an inconvenience because there's been a leaf on the track, has fallen on the track, so it's
yeah.
been delayed 3 times in this journey. You know, just really poking fun. 'Cause that's a British sort of humour as well, that they just sort of blended in there as well because everyone jokes about the trains and how unreliable they are.
It is, and I mean, I'll keep saying it all the way through this podcast, but like the writing in it was just genius. I mean, Sanjeev Bhaskar, I don't know if he was like the main mind behind it. He seemed like he was, and obviously he was the main star in the show himself. But like the writing in it was absolutely fantastic, and he was a real pioneer when it comes to British Asian comedy, wasn't he? And like I don't know about you, but he's someone that I definitely look up to in that sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he was being in quite a few things that I'd seen as well because um, he was in Kamar's at number 42 as well. I
He
think
was, yeah,
it's just it's just the way he's gone about. It's always hard being the pioneer because when you're doing something new, when there's a sort of movement, it's always hard. And he just embodied it really well. And he opened the door for a lot of people as well because not even just in sketch comedy, you know, like comedy, for example. Like I know Jeff Mirza was like mid-90s as well. And then you have like Paul Chowdhury as well, who's obviously huge. And him coming through the 90s and the 2000s, you know, I feel like this would have inspired a lot of people at the time as well.
definitely an inspiration, definitely a sense of he kicked the door in for everyone else. Like and he's kind of created that avenue and that path, which yeah, Paul Chowdhury's gone into, and other people. Obviously, we could spend all naming them, but there's so many people who are like now on that mainstream level who are British Asian comedians, and yeah, I think Sanjeev Bhaskar did really well in that. But let's just go back to some more of the characters. Like so, you mentioned the Kapuras and the Robinsons. I remember at the time my favourites were the two young lads who like would just always.
Oh, Ras Malai.
Yeah, the Rasmalai. I used to
Oh,
absolutely love those, like, because I don't know, like, that really related to me as I was, obviously, when this came out, I was about 10 years old. I never told the story about how I came across it, because, like, it used to be on TV about 8 p.m. on a Friday night, and I was about 10 years old, so I was kind of in that phase where I was allowed to be up at that time, but someone else was watching the TV, not me. But my mum used to tape it for me, and then the next morning, I remember I used to go downstairs and I used to watch the tape of it all the time. And I used to go back and re-watch that tape over and over again, and I used to absolutely love it.
oh, that's amazing because yeah, you would have been a bit older than me. So was that around the time it came out? You would have been about 10. So when it was fresh on the sort of scene, because I came across it a few years after.
Yeah, man, I lived through it when it was coming out, and I mean, obviously, in those days there wasn't the internet as much and all those kind of things. So I think there must have been a good advertising campaign for it in the run up to it, because my mum knew it was going to be on, and she knew she wanted to record it so she could watch it. I remember just like kind of sitting with her watching it the next day, and I wasn't really paying too much attention to it because I'm only 10 years old, but she is laughing her ass off at a lot of this stuff. So it really draws my attention from whatever I'm doing, like playing with my wrestling toys or whatever. So then I sit
Yeah.
down and start watching it. And at that age, it was only real lines like that thing you do with your hand, very bad that used to make me laugh. And these young lads, because I didn't really understand a lot of the references at the
Yeah.
time. But yeah, like as I get older and older, like I was watching it this week in the run up to this podcast. There's so much great stuff in there. It's mad.
No, you're right. I mean, and the lads as well. Like it just embodied, like sort of like immigrant children in the sense that have come here, obviously into this country, um, through their parents, and they're finding their way as well because they're trying to find their way through like British society, where do they fit in. They're having not sort of doubts, but they're sort of conflicted sometimes between being good Asian boys and then having a bit
Yeah,
of fun. It's and just the way they're just together as well. The chemistry that they have is just funny, and the Ras Malai, like we said, the way they're just chase girls, never get them. And, they have these big conspiracy theories as well. They're always talking about the big things and, like, they've got this conspiracy theory and then just mess it all up, by saying something stupid after it. Like, when I remember once where they were talking about, like, a cricket team, but everybody in the world becoming Asian, so they just have one cricket team.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then
yeah.
turns being captain. And it was just, like, so funny of how their thought process came to boom, everyone just is going to be Asian in the world.
Yeah, definitely. And I watched that one today, and I'm like a decent cricket fan, but I don't know too much about late 90s cricket. And they do mention like everyone in the world is going to take turns being captain, and then like Kulvinder Gill goes, "What you mean like now?" And like I don't know if they're talking about India or England, but it doesn't matter who they're talking about. It's just a funny line, isn't it? But there's another funny line in it. What was it? Oh yeah, when they're talking about, oh, everyone in the world's going to be Indian. Kulvinder Gill's like, oh no, man, and he's like, oh, what's up? He's
Yeah,
like, if everyone's Indian, who am I going to smoke in front of without my mum finding out? And I just thought
yeah.
that is a proper Asian thought process, isn't it?
Oh man, it's so bad. The whole gossiping thing. Oh man, like I 100% bet like if my grandma saw one of her mates' grandsons or one of her mates like sons in the street with another girl that's not his wife or somebody that's smoking or somebody
Mm-hmm.
out late at night, she'd be like, "Oh my god, guess whose son I saw late at
Yep.
night?" Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just happens.
It does, and like that's why. I mean, one of the many reasons why this show like really hits home with me, and obviously with you as well. Like, just
Yeah,
they
definitely.
got it so bang on. It wasn't like there's some TV shows that come out that have like white writers and they'll cast an Asian
Oh yeah,
cast, and it's not
yeah.
really on point, is it?
No, no.
But
Well, I don't know about Citizen Khan, but Citizen Khan just felt just not authentic. Do you know what I mean? It just wasn't a very, didn't have an authentic feel to it. This has a very authentic feel to it. Like in this one, there's another character. I don't think they're very main characters. They're recurring sometimes. It's a doctor, that when somebody comes in and he's like, "Oh, how can we treat them?" And the doctor's
hmm
like, "Oh, you need, you know, two two lemons, a bit of garlic, a bit of mint, you,
yeah,
stuff like that. Giving people medical advice that they're obviously not qualified to give." And my grandma does that so much.
yeah,
Even
yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah,
like she's talking to a mate on the phone, and the mate's like, "Oh yeah, Yasmin, both derde tango me, bazu me. There's a lot of pain in my legs and my arm." And my grandma's there, man. She's giving him full lecture. Like she's gone to bloody Oxford to study medicine. Like she knows everything. She's there, like, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. And especially now because of Corona, my grandma's just sending me
yes. I was
bloody
gonna say that.
ingredients next on WhatsApp.
Yeah, man, I was gonna say that. Like, oh my God, this is definitely one thing about, especially older Asian people, is they'll be like, oh, all you need to do is just try these seeds, and then you'll be all right. Like, just have it once in the morning with your breakfast. Put it in your breakfast if you want, but just have it every morning with your breakfast. And honestly, you're gonna. Your calves are gonna grow bigger every day. I promise you. Just some random. They'll just equate some random stuff to it all the time.
Oh man, yeah, exactly. And that whole thing I just saw, that is so true. Like anywhere you go, I went to Pakistan in January, and my aunties, my grandmas, sister, they're all the same, man. Like literally, they think they've got the cure. Do you know what I mean? Like you could come and you could have your leg might need amputated, but they're like we
Yeah.
can your leg just have this mint with lemon. And you just think, oh, come on.
Yeah, you're not eating apples often enough. That's what it is. If you just eat apples
Yeah.
more often, your leg would have never been in this in the first place.
No, man, you're right. And this is what I mean. It's just so relevant. And like when we say it's ahead of its time, this came out in 90, what, with 22 years. And it, like I said, it's still relevant today. It was still relevant when my mum was talking about the black clothing to me today. And that's my mum. She was born in 73.
Yeah, man, definitely. It is crazy, crazy good. Anyone who's a British Asian out there who's not seen Goodness Gracious Me, they need to go and check it out, whether it's on the iPlayer or whether they're going to track it down on eBay or Amazon or whatever. They need to find this, and I think they need to own it. It needs to be in their collection to put on once every couple of years. And give it another watch, and it's still going to be relevant every time you watch it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Then it scares me as well though because I think to myself, obviously there's some cultural aspects I'll pick up on. If I remember a parent, am I going to be like this? Am I going to
Sure.
am I going to be like that? Do you know what I mean? It's interesting.
I think it'll probably be a case of there's definitely some bits that you're gonna still do, but like I think over the course of time you lose stuff and you pick up new stuff and things change that way, don't they?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was just thinking of another thing as well because like now I've hit the age of 24, so I don't know what happened, but as soon as I hit 24, my mum, like cousins, my aunties, whoever was saying to me, "Oh, Silham, I know this really nice girl. You know, she's beautiful." And they always want to say, she's white as well, like she's very fair, which is somehow important. But it's
Yeah.
that whole thing of trying to arrange a marriage, and they have a really good sketch on here as well. You know, the arranged shag.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I'm not seeing it this week when I was rewatching it, but yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens? This guy comes home from work, and this is how I was, and he's like, come home, and he sees like the samosas, the teas out. He's like, he clocks on and thinks, oh God, my mum's gonna have a girl round with her parents, and they're gonna ask me for my hand in marriage. And he's freaking out, and his mum goes, no, if we know you don't want to get married, but just shag her, at least, just have sex with
Yeah.
her. And it's so funny because it's that aspect of having that control. He's like the Asian parent just loves to control every aspect sometimes
Yeah,
of
yeah.
their kid's life. And to go that far as well, I just thought, honestly, it was class. And he was like, no, I want to get to know her first. Can I get to know her? And he's like, no, do it. And I just thought,
Yeah.
that was genius as well.
It was. I think that's the scene as well where they do the mimic of Ghost, the film Ghost. You've probably not seen that. It's an old film. They do a mimic of Ghost in there as well, but no, that's good. So, what are some of your other like favorite scenes? Then you mentioned the arranged shag one. Because like one that struck me before, and oh my God, this is so real, is where the guy wants to go out. He goes, "Oh, mum, dad, I'm going out now. I'm gonna go hang out with my friends." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, sure." Go hang out with your friends. I mean, me and your dad will be dead soon anyway, and then you can hang out with your friends all the time.
Oh, the guilt tripping. The
The
guilt tripping.
guilt tripping, man.
The guilt tripping is so real. Like, it still happens now as well. And like, it's so funny. My grandma and granddad, they'll laugh at this. They'll laugh at this. I'm thinking, you're good guilt trippers. You do.
Yeah.
Really good. Because I'll do that. I'm like, I'll come home from like work, let's say a long week and gigs, whatever, and I want to go. I'm about to go somewhere. I just say, oh, I'm off here. I'm gonna go see this, and they're like, oh, okay. And it's just that tone that just switches, in the voice. It's like a puppy, a puppy that's like, oh, you're gonna leave, are you? But one of my favorite scenes as well, other one is, it's when we talk about the reverse stereotypes. So when they pretend
Hmm.
to be a white family, so they're not done brown face. Everyone's literally just powdered themselves up to be white, and it shows like that stereotype of like a white family being very dysfunctional.
I can't remember that one, I don't think.
Yeah. So what happens on that one?
Oh, wait, are
So
they pissheads actually? I can't.
yes, yeah, they are, and in that thing, it's that whole thing about because obviously we're from like a culture which is classed as like a collectivist culture. So collectivist in the sense you place family before anything else. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And then with this stereotype, obviously, is that the the English family didn't care about the family. So like their granddad's in the corner, and he basically dies, and they're all
Oh
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
we should go to the pub for a pint, that sort of thing of like, oh, let's just go and get drunk, and that there's so many stereotypes in that I could name loads of them, but they really played that scene well as well because it was a very real stereotype that some Asian people held of white families at the time.
They made it funny with like ridiculousness, like the the vermin trapper, the guy who's going to kill the mice, but like he's not going
Yeah,
to kill them. He's like, no, 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 no. I'm going to enlighten them so they will not poo under your fucking oven. I was like, that is. When I was a kid, I didn't really enjoy it, but like as an adult watching it back, I'm like, that is fucking good shit.
yeah, it's very clever as well, and some of the aspects I like as well is when they're sort of bringing like some religious sides of it as well, especially with that guru, the guru, the Hindu guru, who's
Yeah, yeah, he's
there,
always doing
and
song lyrics and stuff.
yeah, and he's there going tapping it, going Amitabh Bachchan, just like naming Bollywood actors,
Yeah, yeah,
and he's
yeah.
trying to enlighten people, and they're all like, oh, so Guruji, what does this mean? And he's just there going off the dome, he
He's
just
winging it
recites.
big time, isn't he?
Yeah, and he just puts a little accent, bashes a few symbols, and he goes, and it's just so funny because I just think that's so relevant because when you have a look at sort of like um, cults in like India that sort of entice Western people, it's just like it's one big orgy, isn't it? And it's just and
Hmm.
that's what he sort of gets to as well, and that creepiness as well that some leaders have.
Yeah, they really did touch on that. But that character, they used him at, like, goodness gracious me, used to do this thing where like at the end of each episode they'd do the credits, dun 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 dun, dun, and then at the end they'd play
Yeah,
like one more scene at the end of the episode that was like not a part of the episode. It was just like an extra, so you had to sit through all the credits. And there was this one scene where he knocks on the door and he's like, "Excuse me, have you ever thought of becoming a Buddhist?" And then the woman's like,
yeah,
"Oh yeah, yeah, I have actually." And he's like, "Well, you can't. Have a nice day." And then he runs off.
yeah. I know what you're talking about. The other good one is well, like you said after the credits where he goes and knocks on the door and says, "Have you ever thought about becoming a Hindu?" And she's like, "No," and he's like, "Okay, what about double glazing?" You know what I mean? It's just
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just all about money, isn't it? That's his main focus.
Yeah, man, it's
And
such a
also, I
great.
just wanted to, sorry, Adam, what you saying?
Nah, go on, man.
I was just saying the other good one when I just thought money is obviously money in terms of culture. Asian culture is a very important undertone, because when money comes from like a developing place, having money is a sort of,
Sure.
it's a sort of symbol of doing well. And the one that really I find hilarious is the two aunties when they argue about
Oh
the shop.
yeah, yeah, they're
We missed
amazing.
out part because that's one of that's so real.
Yeah, but how big is his danda?
Literally, that'd be the last question. It'd be so funny because I was watching once and she was talking about a kid. He's like, he's coming back and he's going to number 10 and he's going to Tony Blair and, he's going to do work with the Prime Minister. Then the other grandma's like, well, my son is going to the White House to work with Bill Clinton.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's just that competition of who's better, am I better, or are you better? And that's so real because I remember like when I did like my GCSEs, for example, and I got some decent grades. But then when my grandma came back and told me about her mate's grandson who got all A stars, and I was like, did he really though? Because
Yeah.
you know he's always on a pedal bike, you know, saying that you can buy something off him for a tenner. So I'm like, this
Yeah.
is it's it's just not real, is it?
It's
But
not, but the great thing about that is it is very true in the Asian society, but it's true across the board, isn't it? That whole
definitely,
braggadocious culture and that whole lack of art of conversation where instead of two people talking to each other, it's I'm going to wait for you to finish talking, and now I'm going to tell you my impressive thing. Oh, no, no, I'm going to wait for you to finish
Yeah,
talking, now I'm going to tell you my impressive thing. And we also know a lot of people like that as well.
exactly. No, no, that's a very good point. And with that as well is what's funny is they're not just arguing. Even when they're arguing about, they start arguing about whose son is a bigger idiot. And as long as you're the
Yeah,
bigger,
yeah.
whatever, as long as you're the bigger, whatever, you're the man. And the grandma's just arguing and goes, well, my son is such an idiot that I have to come and change him 3 times a day in his office. And then she's like, well, my son doesn't even have a job. You know, it's
Yeah, yeah.
it's just the way they go at it with each other.
And it's
The
also a kind of take on that old Monty Python thing, where they're like, oh, back in my day, we had four people living in a room, and like, oh, you had a room? We couldn't afford a room. Like, we had to sleep on a carpet in the street. Oh, you had a carpet? We were just on the concrete, that kind of thing.
yeah, no, no, that they were definitely some of my favourites as well.
Definitely, those are absolutely classic bits. But I remember another bit that I used to like is when the Asian guy comes home with his housemate, the white guy, and he goes, "Mum, Dad, I've got something to tell you." And he
Oh,
te
yeah.
and he goes, "I'm gay." And then the white guy gets up and goes, "So am I." And they're like, "What? Both of you?"
Yes, that's class. Cause
And like
that's
it all turns
great.
around to the end of the episode where like they're not bothered that he's gay. They're just like, oh, but could you at least not pick a nice Indian boy? Like it all just comes down to can you not get with another Indian person? We don't care about your sexuality. We just want you to be with an Indian. And that's so, so true of the culture, isn't it?
Yeah, I think when they're coming over here into like Western society, which is very different, I think a lot of people have that fear of what if I lose my sense of identity? What if I lose my culture?
Sure.
It's I mean, I'm sort of impartial to it. I don't understand why it would bother someone so much.
It's interesting because I don't know if you get. I get it myself, and obviously with my background, you would have thought no one would really put that on me, but
Yeah,
people
yeah,
do. Like, and whether it's family or friends or people who I've just met, like people will put it on me, and people like always ask me, even if they just like met me a week ago, they'll be like, "Are you gonna marry an Asian girl? Are you gonna marry an Asian?" And all this kind of stuff, and it's like, wow, I can't believe that like it's so ingrained in even the younger generation that like they ask it as well.
yeah, for sure. But it's not even that. Though. It's not even just family, but it's more like it's even like white friends being like, "Oh, do you reckon you're gonna get married to an Asian girl?" And I'm like, "What sort of question is that? I don't ask you if you're gonna get married to a white person."
Yeah, it's a really weird thing, like as if the person's ethnicity is like the thing that you've got like a tick sheet and you're like, right, must be Asian as the top thing.
Oh man, you're right, you're right. But what's funny is as well when we talk about all this, like who you getting with the matches. When you know the check please guy as well here,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
but that's so true because it's such a culture where the culture is very just say what you're thinking without any regard. Hear you talk. You know, if you've got something that mean to say, just keep it to yourself. Just don't say it. And he's there, and you think he's going to say something lovely, a nice compliment, and then he just switches it, to say something offensive, and they just walk out on him every
Definitely.
time.
And that was another one of the things that was like really relatable for people is that that character could have been Asian, he could have been white, he could have been South American, he could have been African, he could have been from anywhere. And the things that he was saying is going to be relatable in any culture, like, oh, you lot must be models, oh, because you're all proper thick in it, and like, check please, and all that stuff. Just,
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah, yeah.
it's relatable to anyone.
No, you're totally right, and it's been like it's here for us as well. I remember one of my friends, she was going to Pakistan, and she was at the immigration. They looked at her passport, and they looked at the picture, and they straight up said to her, "Adam, they don't or get to him, and you've put on a bit of weight since this picture, haven't you?"
Christ.
Yeah, yeah, really, and that's the thing of sometimes just not thinking about it, just saying it how it is. It's funny, really, isn't it?
Yes, but there's so many different stereotypes that like it kind of it does.
like goodness gracious me, does it covers the whole board of like Asian stereotypes and that just the amount of quality that they would do in like just one 22-minute episode, like and the dad that thinks everything is Indian, like that is just a great
Oh,
great bit.
oh, that's amazing. Yeah, like literally anything that's Indian. And the funny one is it Winston Churchill statue that he's got? Whose statue is it? And he puts a turban on him.
Is it William Shakespeare, maybe?
Shakespeare, that's it. It's not Churchill, it's Shakespeare.
Walimir Shacklespeare.
Yeah, honestly, that was class. I remember I had sort of like granduncle like that before he passed. He lived in Pakistan, but he had great English, talking really well, and he had that same sort of attitude. Well, it's not the British's, it was India's, because obviously at the time he was young, it was
Yeah.
India back then, partition. So he would say the same sort of things, and he'd be like, "Remember, kids, Britain, bad, always Pakistan." I'm like, yeah, this is massively relatable.
Wow, because I've never really met someone like that who would.
Oh, so you never really met, yeah, because with him as well, he was very well educated. I think he spent time as a journalist, and he must have been in his early 20s in the partition. So I think he remembers the impact that Britain had in the Commonwealth. So I think sometimes he
Sure.
had sort of resentment towards it as well, because he just saw it as like, like they have that thing, the Queen's crowns, the Queen's jewels, the diamonds come from India, and it's that thing of, we feel like our resources have been stolen. India as well fought in the war, helped defeat the Nazis, not getting the sort of credit that they're due.
Yeah, definitely.
I think was it like 1 million like soldiers from India, helped with the war, and that's what helped the Allies. The Allies out were the Commonwealth, and I think he just had the sort of resentment of how people have that short memory of what happened, and they just sort of forget. I think he was trying to keep that alive. Of we have to recognise what happened.
Sure, I don't know what the numbers are, but yeah, you're definitely right on that. 'Cause I remember my grandma's brother, he fought in the war. I mean, obviously he was from Pakistan. He fought in the war for the Allied powers, and like you kind of feel like to a large extent that a lot of their contributions are kind of ignored by by people in general. You do see like the memes pop up every now and then of like some like lefties will be like, listen, and there'll be that picture where there's like eight guys, Sikh guys in turbans saying, "Look, Indians fought for us in the war, so how can you be racist?" I mean, I'm butchering the meme, but basically that's the gist of it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, totally. And I think um, with this as well, with with the show as well, it shows you how actually how similar we are, but also different at the same time. If that makes sense.
Sure,
Bec-
it's kind of a celebration of the differences, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely, and that's the best thing about it.
What do you think its legacy is then, like as a show? Like what do you see as its legacy? Because we mentioned before that like typically people your age, if they're not Asian, they don't really know this show existed. So how do you see its legacy?
Because let's say for example you look at some TV shows from the 90s which were big, like you see Seinfeld, even comedies, or you see like The Sopranos for example, and you've got everybody watching them even years on,
Sure.
and it's kind of shame because, like you said, with this it's only going to be sort of passed, let's say through me, to sort of like a younger generation, to my cousin or my little cousins or future kids, "Oh, come on kids, check this out, you'll love this." I just think the legacy, it'll just be like a word, like, through words, like through everyone sort of talking about it, as opposed to having a legacy. Does that make sense? Because for us, it means a great deal, but when you look at the general population, it's not the same sort of loves are not there, like we said.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point that these shows from the 90s, just to anglicize that a little bit, you take something like Phoenix Nights. Now, you mention
Oh yeah,
Phoenix Nights to anyone, and they'll be like, a lot of people will be like, "Oh, I love that show, I love it." Even if they weren't even like alive at the time when it came out, they just love it so much. And I think goodness gracious me, not to compare them, but for me, goodness gracious me is far better. As someone who can kind of relate to both shows, because Phoenix Nights was set in Bolton, I'm from Bolton, obviously. I'm of Asian heritage. This is like a British Asian show, so I can relate to both shows. I see goodness gracious me as like far superior to it, and yeah, like no one really knows it. And I think for me anyway, its legacy is that for the people who saw it and for the doors it's opened for people, I think
Yeah.
it went a real long way to really like helping people like me and you were trying to make it in the comedy world to like give us those avenues to move into.
Oh, for sure, and that's the thing. Like we said, it means a great deal to a lot. It means a lot to us. But then, like I said, with Phoenix Nights, you could go to anywhere. You could, man, you could go to Blackpool. You could go down to London, and you could talk to somebody about Phoenix Nights. Everyone knows, Peter Kay. But this for us, for me especially, goodness gracious me, means more than any program that came out, especially in the 90s.
Yeah, 'cause it was very much a clear symbolizer of like if you want to, you can make it onto this stage. You can make something of it in the entertainment industry, which obviously when I was 10 years old, I wasn't really thinking of. I wasn't really thinking of it till very, very recently, obviously, only just getting into comedy a couple of years ago. But to see this and to see British Asians being given their chance on the screen, it's fantastic. And for me, it does have like a long-lasting legacy because we've been talking for about 40 minutes now, and we've been saying how it's still relevant today. And I think even if they did the reruns on BBC now, I think it would still get a lot of people buzzing about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the point that you made as well, Adam, about opening a lot of avenues for people, I think that's a major one. Because when I look now, I think if we look at sports, for example, let's take cricket out of it because there's a stereotype that, Pakistanis are good at cricket anyway.
Sure.
You look at football, you look at rugby, you have a look at a lot of the big sports. Even in boxing, I mean, what was Amir Khan was the first British Pakistani world champion, and
Yeah.
that was only until recently. And you think sometimes there's a stereotype about people, even in acting, some men lead roles, unless they're specifically for a, black or ethnic, Asian ethnic minority, sorry. There's not really any leads. But when you look at things like comedy, even now, with what Ali Official and Atif Nawaz are doing, is it Muslimic and their sketch show on BBC? What they're doing is, when you look at comedy and stand-up comedians, there have been so many Asian comedians that have made it on the big stages. They've been TV comedians, and that gives us sort of hope as well. It's one industry where it doesn't matter what you look, what colour you are, what sexuality you are, what race you are, who you are, just anyone. It's if you're good, and somebody can see that, they can, take you a long way.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And like it gives you a sense of not necessarily hope, but it gives you a sense of belief that like
Oh yeah, it definitely gives a sense of belief because when you see people around you that are like you in a similar background, mate, you think I can make it. I mean, if somebody's now, wanting to, let's say, play football in the Premier League, who's their role model? Who can they look up to and say, oh, he's like me, he made it. I can play
definitely
for
there's
Men
there's
United.
only been like one in terms of like British Pakistani who played in the Prem. I don't think he even ever played a game. He was called Zesh Rahman and he was contracted to Fulham for a few years and he's done the rounds and I think he's a Pakistani international now. But like he was at Fulham when he was a young lad. But again, I only know that because I've gone and like seeked out that information. That information didn't come to me. He never really made it. And like you're right, it doesn't really exist. And Amir is the only guy really as like a real British Asian. You could say Prince Nazim as well, I suppose, as two guys in boxes. Again, two guys in not a team sport. Because I feel like a team sport is a lot like being an actor. You've got to kind of be cast in that role. You've got to be chosen
Yeah, you're right.
to play that position, if that makes sense. Whereas boxers, you're not really chosen.
No, I totally agree with you. And it's a funny one.
So how about nowadays then? Do you think there's a market nowadays for goodness gracious me on TV?
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. I think with something like Goodness Gracious Me now, everybody would have liked it Whereas I think with some sketch shows now, um, it feels like they tailor it very much for like an Asian audience. Do you know what I mean? With very Asian humour. And
Yeah.
with Goodness Gracious Me, like we said, it appealed to everybody. It had role reversals. It was it was dynamic. It was different. Whereas now, I think sometimes people are like, okay, what's your audience? You know, it's not. Are you trying to get everybody to like it? It's more like, what's your audience? Okay, I've got an Asian audience. This is what Asian people like. This is what I'll do.
Yeah, that's a good point, that, because you can watch Goodness Gracious Me, and if you take away the fact that the actors who are playing the characters are Asian, you could it's relatable to everyone. Like, obviously there's a lot of an Asian slant on it, but like we said before with the check please guy, that could have been a white person, it could have been anyone, it could have
Exactly.
someone from Lithuania, for example, could have been anyone saying.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right in that. And with like we said, like I see like a lot of sketch shows now, and it's very much done in a way where it's like, okay, only some people will understand my perspective or will understand the sketch, not not everyone. And that's the thing as well, I think, which is difficult when we go on stage as well as stand-ups and we talk about our life and our perspective. People think that it's easy to make somebody laugh from like an Asian perspective, but it's not, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to make it relatable for everyone to look at it from your perspective, when a lot of people, they don't have your perspective. So it's only relatable or funny straight away when it's very stereotypy. But when you're doing things which are different and sort of thought provoking stuff, you have to do quite a bit more to get the sort of crowd on board sometimes.
Yeah, definitely, because obviously you're coming from like a deeper angle on it, like because you obviously know everything around the culture, and like I don't know about you, but have you ever tried to explain something about Asian culture to people and they just don't understand it, and like
Oh yes,
no
you know
matter
what a
what you
big one
do.
is. Yeah, mate, a big one is at the bathroom. So what we would call a lotta
Yeah, yeah,
is,
yeah.
it's very hard. People can't fathom. Now, Asian people, what a lot of people do is we would use water to clean our asses, not just use tissue. That's a big one, and no matter how you sort of explain it, nobody just puts two and two together. It's always an awkward one, because whenever I had one in my bathroom, wherever I've lived, in like my flat, wherever, and I always had one, and my mates be like, "Why have you got a big teapot in the?
Yeah.
Why have you got a big teapot in the
I mean,
bathroom?"
that is what it looks like, to be fair, isn't it?
They're not wrong. I mean, they're obviously observant, but I did you explain what it is, and use water to clean yourself, and people just don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things, but yeah, you are right, and like, yeah, and it's just transferring that over to the stage because you're coming from it at such a deep angle, and even when you've got all the time in the world to explain those things to your friend, you can't really explain it, can you? So then you transfer that to the stage where you might have 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes to tell this joke. You don't have enough time to really set the background and really set everything up, do you? And it is really difficult in that sense. Yeah, you're right. But it does
Yeah,
give us also our unique perspective where we can play around with a lot more things that they can't really touch on, I suppose. So
yeah, no,
it swings and
definitely.
roundabouts.
I mean, we can as well, in some ways. We can say things that people can't say but think, and that's why it's funny as well, because people have thought it, or maybe thought something around it, and they've not been allowed to say it because they're just, oh, I'm scared to be branded a racist. And
Sure.
we can say it, and a lot of people say, well, I'll say something, and a lot of people will be like, oh, well, if I said that, that would be racist, wouldn't it? And that's always a funny one, when we can get away with some things. And for sure, I've said things at work, and I've never been reported to HR on anything like that. And I guarantee, if I think somebody that was white said it, they probably would have been in trouble.
Yeah, it's that strange balance that a lot of people go into, isn't it? Where what can you say, what can't you say? But I kind of feel like you kind of know, don't you? Like you don't need set rules.
Yeah, no, you're right, because nobody goes, oh, I didn't know wasn't allowed to say that. Everybody's aware nowadays, especially
Yeah.
because we're going away from the thing now where race is an issue, and I think after race was a big thing of a lot of people with, especially like people being homophobic. That was a big thing, and like now it's the big things like transphobia, for example, and genders.
Sure.
So there, that's in its infancy in the sense like people make jokes about it now, but nobody really, uh, nobody really tells you off for it. Whereas if you make something a joke that's very racist, somebody will speak up for sure. Like they don't even have to be brown or black or Asian or anything. If they're white, they'll speak up like you can't say that. So I think it's
It's
it's a
mad,
good
isn't
time.
it? Though, like we just take it for granted, but 100 years ago, it wasn't like that. You could just say racist stuff, and people would just be like, "Yeah, sure, why not? Crack on, like say Packy all you want," and like they were fine with it. But like now, obviously, we're very privileged in that sense that we live in a time where like people can't just say these like horrible things. Whereas like at one time they could, which is just baffling to me that there was a time in history where, I mean, that people could just get away with it.
No, no, you're 100% right. And see, this is where it comes from as well. Like my granddad was telling me. So my granddad came to this country in 19. Where did England win the World Cup? 66, right? He came
Yeah.
64. So he would have been my age when he came. And he said that when he was one of the first sort of like Pakistani people here, and he said people used to come to him and they used to say to him, oh wow, where are you from? Your skin's amazing. It's beautiful. And he said up until the point where there weren't a lot of like sort of Pakistani people, he said there actually wasn't that much racism. But he
Wow.
said when more people came, when sort of it was more noticeable, and everybody were like, oh God, wherever all these brown people all of a sudden just come from, it was noticeable. That's when he said it got a bit more. Um, a bit more sort of racist. And that's funny as well, because like some things he would say, he'll be like, "Oh no, that guy's a racist," and I'm like, "Are you sure, Granddad, that this guy's racist?" But he's obviously had experiences in his life which are even a lot different to mine. Because if I'm being honest, Adam, I can't remember the last time I was, you know, called a packy. Probably when I was probably 13. So that's 11 years ago.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I heard it like, said to me in a negative way, like you are this, you are, that kind of
Yeah, yeah,
thing.
exactly.
But like, I don't know,
It's
because
more subtle now, isn't it?
you know what it is though now is you read it on the internet, don't you? You read it on like your Facebook feed or something, some idiot you went to school with, and they'll just write something like they won't be very explicit with it. Sometimes they might be, but I don't know, man. But
It's it's
it's a very interesting thing you said about your granddad. Al. Sorry, you said that he came over when he was like one of the first ones said
uh,
anything. And to me, that says to me that when a lot of Pakistanis started turning up, that's when it like started, all the hatred started to really, shit stirred, and like people were like, oh, they're coming over here, they're taking our jobs, they're taking our women, all that kind of bullshit. And then the more that
it's
gets said, the more like people get this racist mindset. And I don't think racism is inherent in us, and that's why when he came over at first, people were all right with it. This needs to be like drummed up by people, doesn't it?
No, you're 100% right. It's like he was almost like a novelty. He's like, oh,
Yeah.
this person's different to us. Like, oh, wow. It's like when you hear about tribes in like Papua New Guinea and the Amazon and they see the white man for the first time and they're like, oh my God. They're like, who is this person? It was that sort of thing that intrigued. They were intrigued. But then this is where it happens because obviously the culture coming from Pakistan, like we said, it's a very collectivist culture. It's a developing country. They've got different values, and when the values don't align, like let's say, for example, like a white American came, or like a white Kiwi came, or a white Australian, wouldn't have struggled as much because of the cultures are similar, and even
Sure.
religion-wise as well. There were so many things which were different, and when you're trying to fit into a society which is so different, it's tough, isn't it?
It's a huge adaptation process. I can even talk about going the other way. Like whenever I go to Pakistan, even if I only go for 2 weeks, I mean, last time I went for like 10 days, so it wasn't even that long. But like, and I've been before, it's hard for me to adapt while I'm there because everything's different. Like the landscape is different, everything looks different when you're looking around yourself, the infrastructure's different, the food's different,
Yeah.
like just, and I can only imagine going the other way in the days where like you'd be by yourself, or you might have one or two family members here, you might have one or two friends here, and you're trying to make a new life for yourself. And what a culture shock it would have been. How far do you go? How far do you go to fit in? Do you leave all of you, like you were saying at the start of this podcast, like you're proud of your grandparents, you're proud of where you've been, but what if you were your grandparents, you're the first one to come over? How much do you do?
Exactly.
How much do you do to fit in? Like what do you leave behind? Do you start dressing differently? Do you start trying to take the English accent? Where do you stop? I don't know.
Yeah, well, see, and that's the thing as well, because I remember as well, like, and when you talked about dress, like, so my grandma would wear like the traditional shalwar kameez, and I remember sometimes being like, "Oh, why is she wearing that?" Do you know what I mean? When I was like 5 years old, but that's because I didn't understand, and I was growing up in a culture where
Hmm.
I've this is all I've known, and it's funny because when you go to Pakistan, it's like you're seen as a Westerner. Do you
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
definitely. Yes.
And when you're here, you kind of not fully Western. So
Yep.
you're never going to be Pakistani enough for the Pakistanis, and you're never going to be English enough for the English.
There's a block party song and it's called "Where Is Home," and I'll send it to you after we're talking. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
definitely, it's such a great song, and basically like the lyrics are something like second generation view is a point of view not listened to, and all this stuff, and like that really much encapsulates the kind of thing you're talking about now. And like I can completely agree with you because like when I go to Pakistan, like one of my dad's cousins, he says it in a jokey way, but he always goes
yeah,
British, Gayale, British, and like, but like he'll say British in like a really drawn out, exaggerated way, and like to take the mick a little bit, you know, like kind of like uncle nephew kind of relationship. But yeah, so yeah, it is. It's a weird one.
No, no, you're right. Because then when I went as well, like my auntie as well, my mum's cousin, she's always going. She's if a mates are over, she'll she'll be like, "Oh, you have to come with me to my mate's house," and then she like introduce me like,
Yeah,
"This is Silham. He's from England," and everybody's
yeah,
fascinated, like, "Whoa, England, where they have electricity 24/7 and not just for like 4 hours of the day." Like
yeah.
they're just so amazed.
It is. It's fun, but I love it there, man. I love it. And it's really. It is. It's to me. I find it like a kind of a white privilege thing of like really fascinating to go over there because I see it as an outsider as well as an insider. They make me feel so welcome and so at home. But obviously, because we don't live there, we can look at all the stuff that is a bit strange to us because we don't see it. And like, yeah, like I say, like to go back to your grandparents and to go back to the immigration thing. And one of the reasons why Goodness Gracious Me was so good is I can't imagine people coming over here for the first time and then goodness gracious me really being the first people to be like, right, let's have a look at this whole picture, and now let's take the
Exactly.
mick out of it a little bit.
No, no, you're right. And even when we look at that, like what did you say, in '98 was when it first sort of aired. So, and if the first people came in the early '60s, that's almost a 35, between 35 and 40 years. That's about
It's a
37
generation,
years.
yeah.
Yeah, that's 34, 30. Yeah, it's crazy.
And it
That's
would have been
probably,
it would have been the first time. Sorry to cut you off, but it would have been the first
no,
time that they saw themselves represented on TV, and for once they weren't the butt of the joke. It wasn't brownface anymore. It wasn't, hey, look, Asians are like this. Let's all laugh at them because there'd be one typical Asian character in the show that be used to take the mick out of. Now it was they're all Asians, and yeah, we're going to take the mick out of ourselves a little bit. We're going to take a bit piss a bit out of the white man, and it's just going to be the whole thing. And I think this is really important culturally from that standpoint.
oh, definitely. Because I think East came out in the '90s as well, didn't it? Um,
Just after this, it would have come. Yeah, I think about 2001 maybe.
that's just so like that's so interesting because it's just such a representation all of a sudden out of nowhere for so many Asian people, on TV and film.
Yeah, I mean, I've just looked it up now. East is East was 99, but even East is East to me was like kind of a piss take a little bit of Asian society, and it was like
Oh,
the dad.
100%.
Yeah, the dad was the bad guy in the film, wasn't he? And he had to like kind of lose his Asianness through the film to kind of become like a good guy and have redeeming qualities, didn't he?
Yeah, no, no, you're right, Adam, and you're 100% right in that. I'm reading a book right now because I'm interested in studying about social anthropology, which is,
That's
it's
interesting
it.
because I didn't know you could actually read. So nice one.
Yeah, I mean, I had to get a translation, mate.
Yeah.
Right to left.
Has
That's
it
the
got
way I
nice
got.
pictures in it?
Yeah, it has and colouring. It had some free crayons that came with it, so that was a
Oh,
bonus.
sweet.
I know, but I was reading something about cultures. It was very interesting. It was talked about how you know how is one culture right. Um, how are they right to say this is how things should be done?
Yeah,
So, for example, like it talked about a very controversial topic. So it talked about you know female um, genital mutilation,
yeah,
and it talked about some countries. I think this was South Sudan. This tribe was based,
yeah,
and for somebody to go into manhood or into like womanhood, for centuries, for years, this tribe um, has been obviously circumcising boys and then doing what they have to on the other side of it as well. But they were arguing for why is it right that Western society is saying this is sort of bad, and just because they don't practice it in their society, and they're not doing it out of torture, they're not trying to be torturous. It's just a ritual that's been done for centuries and
hmm
centuries to indicate that somebody's become a man or somebody's become a woman, and it's just really interesting to see how whatever we think is right, sometimes we have that viewpoint where like this is right, nothing else can be, nothing else can be right, everything else is wrong, we're right.
I think there's definitely room for discussion in the wider general scope of things. I mean, I don't know about FGM. I don't know if I agree with that one, but I think in
Oh yeah, of
definitely,
course. I mean, that was
yeah,
just an extreme example. That's only because it was in the book,
sure,
but it was very, of course, it's in a way sort of outdated, but it was just trying to argue that why is who is what is one culture to tell another culture what to do, basically.
definitely. And I think obviously the Western culture rules it a lot because they've got a lot of the mainstream media that covers a lot of the world. So anything that they put across is kind of seen
Exactly.
all over the place. And I think that's why it's one of the ruling things. But yeah, it's interesting, man. That's definitely interesting. But that's a goodness gracious me then. What on a scale of 1 to 10, then what would you rate it?
Oh mate, honestly, I'd give it a solid 9,
Yeah, I
maybe
think
9.5.
yeah, I was going to go there. I was going to go 9.5 or 10 because to me this is like I say, for me personally, it was very very strong to see that representation on the screen because besides this, there was no the only other positive Asian faces you would see on the screen is when cricket was on,
Oh,
wasn't it?
legit, you're right. Who was that guy, man? Was it Nassim Hussain? Was it Nasser Hussain?
Nasser Hussain, yeah, England
That's
captain, yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah. He'd be the only hero. But then, you're right, man. It was a new wave. It opened a lot of doors.
definitely. Like one thing actually we've not touched on actually is the musical numbers in this show. Now I know obviously like I'm slightly older than you, so you might, but there's a song in this where they parody Pulp's Common People and they do Hindi people, and I absolutely love this parody. And they also parody as well Barbie Girl, and they do like I think
Yes.
is it Bangla Girl or something like that?
Yeah. It's class, and they do one in Men in Black as well.
They do,
Um,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Honestly, yeah. And I think, do you know what? Actually, when you think about it, some of the parodies they have on the songs, that's undertones of Bollywood, because Bollywood TV is very much you watch something and there's always a song and somebody breaks into dance. So I don't know if they've done it that way where it's linking to that sort of cultural side of it as well with film and having some sort of music in there, even if it is funny.
No, definitely. I think that's. I mean, that's not something that I'd really noticed before. But now you mention it, I think you're definitely right. They do take from Bollywood in those instances, and I mean, it's absolutely fantastic for it.
Oh, I agree with you. Just everything about it, like 9.5. It just the way it was done, um, what it meant for people, and even for the guys that starred in it themselves, um, it opened a lot of doors. Like I watch a program where Sanjeev um, Bhaskar is like a detective on ITV, and
Yeah.
what's it called? It's called Forgotten, I think, and he's there like playing
Is it
in this
Unforgotten? I think.
Unforgotten. That's the one. Um, and he's there, man. It's so good because that's not a comedy. That's a very serious detective series, and it just shows you how for everyone it just helped their careers as well. And it's just good to see. It gives you hope.
Definitely, and you know, he's cameoed in Doctor Who and stuff like that, and you know, I mean, they've all done it to an extent, haven't they?
I mean, was Nina Raddy in EastEnders? I'm pretty sure she was, wasn't she? Or
I've
am I
never
making
really
that up?
watched EastEnders, but I think she was, yeah.
Yeah. I just checked she was, and you know, it's good to see that representation.
And I think wasn't Culver de Gear. I think he was in like Blinded by the Light, that film about a young Asian boy and his love for Bruce Springsteen in the 80s, which I think is a really good film as well. Again, another example of positive Asian role models on screen.
No, definitely. I've actually meaning to watch that. Actually, is that the one that's got Jack Carroll in? Is Jack Carroll in that, or am I making that up?
I can't remember actually if he's in it or not.
But because I'd seen him promoting it somewhere, and it is on my list to watch. So I'll definitely watch that.
Yeah, man, check it out. So as we wrap up then, and we can give like an overview. So all in all, then, what are your thoughts on coming out of this? On goodness gracious me.
Well, coming out of it, I'm just glad somebody shares the sort of devotion that I do. I mean, we've just talked, we've done a podcast episode on it. I don't know if that's ever been done for the show. So, we're top fans right there. But coming out of it, it just broadens your mind, doesn't it? It opens your mind up to what's possible, to what can be achieved, and just you know how to create something forward thinking, like just create something which is relevant in 20 years, 25 years. The best pieces of art are the ones that are timeless, that you can't put a time limit on.
Yeah,
And I still feel like this, in generations to come, is a timeless piece.
definitely. I don't know anyone who's ever seen it who don't enjoy it. Yeah, even when traditional English people watch it, they do enjoy it. It's just I don't think enough of them give it enough of a chance, and I think if they did, I think they'd absolutely love it.
Exactly.
But
Oh, mate,
yeah,
100%
Silham,
agreed, yeah.
thanks for coming on, man. Is there anything you want to plug before you get off?
It's a pleasure. Oh, well, if you guys like to follow me, on Instagram, it's at _ Mango Lassie Pappy. I'm also keeping, Mango Lassie in there, sticking to my roots. And yeah, if my Facebook page is Silham Shazad Comedy, so feel free to like that. I've got a lot of videos I do need to upload, but you know how it is right now. We're not gigging on him, and we can't get our videos on there. It's a bit of a pain.
There we go. It is tough, but yeah, definitely go follow Silham on Instagram and on his Facebook page, Mango Pappy Lassie and Silham Shazad Comedy. So, thank you very much for joining me today, mate.
It's a pleasure, Adam. You take care of yourself.
You too, and I'll be back with more episodes of the Do You Remember podcast next week.